Yay!
This
Okay,
thing
hello
goes
everyone.
fast. Hello.
Hopefully we're with you now, so we will make a start. For those who are new here, my name's Nicki, and I'm here with my friend Alina, and we're doing our monthly genre talk live stream. And today's topic is translations, which I'm sure Alina and I have plenty to talk about. So before we kick off, though, I'll give Alina the microphone and let her just introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alina. I'm a self-published author. I write mystery, sci-fi and fantasy, and contemporary romance. And for those of you who don't know, I'm from Romania. My mother tongue is Romanian. So let's just say I've read a lot of translations because, yeah, that's how we consume most literature that's not Romanian. So I've had a long history with translations, and let's say I just experienced their demise, at least in Romanian, for some genres. It's interesting. So we're going to focus on books today, but
I'm sure we'll digress a little as usual.
We'll digress a little because I have to talk. I mean, like, just so you know, when I was a student, we had this internal network, and we had movies there and locally made translations, because back in the day, movies took a long time to reach Romania, if they ever did. This was way before streaming services or any legal way of consuming movies. Just so you know, and some of those translations were, well, special, let's say. So I'm used to seeing bad translations for, fan subs, let's say. But when you see those in a cinema, when you go and pay a lot of money for a multiplex ticket and then spend a lot of money on, popcorn and juice and whatever, and you see a shitty translation, that kind of rubs you the wrong way. Same with books, because you pay a lot of money for them, especially if you don't buy them in like ebook. And let's face it, there aren't that many books in Romanian now. There weren't at the time. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective for me, because also I've read a lot of translations in English, basically.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Obviously. And French, actually, back in the day when I could read in French, which was high school. So I have a nice comparison, which I'm sure you have as well.
Yes, obviously mine's a little bit different because my native language is English, so quite a lot of the stuff I'm consuming from America and England. However, I am, for those of you who know me on the channel, quite a keen linguist. I like studying foreign languages, and when possible, I like to try and read in the original. So I can definitely do that French and German. I can do it a little bit Italian, Czech, Danish. I'm just starting to learn Japanese, so that's a new one. And translation doesn't. Perhaps I should say as well, I do have a postgraduate diploma in translation, and I was originally going to be a translator before I ended up shifting focus and becoming an editor because of my move to Australia. So I do sort of know a fair bit about the actual process of translation as well, which makes me super picky when it comes to getting it right. So I'm sure that we'll have a few similar points of things that we hate as we go along.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should start by saying, when people are reading in translation, how important is it to you to know who the translator was?
At this point, it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't. I avoid translations like the plague. If I have to consume something that's not written in English or Romanian, I will get an English translation, just so you know. Right. So I don't know much about them. I just know they're better than the options I have. Unless it's classics that are being reprinted, because in the past I didn't care because all translations were great. There were a lot fewer produced, and that was because the selection of books that could be translated was limited. But now that I grew up, I realized that maybe I was missing parts of the books, because censorship, yay, socialist country like Romania used to be. There was a lot of censorship. They even censored cartoons made in other communist countries. So that was the level we were at. but they were good translations in the past. They didn't make beginner mistakes, and they translated it from the language it was written in to Romanian. Right now, I've noticed like a strange shift where they get the English book and translate it, because paying for an English translator is probably cheaper.
Right, and then a weird, like more obscure language. Yeah, sure.
Yes, and then you see, because like in English, when they use a foreign word, they would just put it in italics and add an S for the plural. And if you're an idiot and you don't know that, you just consider that to be the Turkish word. You take it into Romanian and then add a Romanian plural, and that's fascinating. I had a book like that. I was so angry. Like I really don't give a crap. I don't care usually. I just read the book and whatever. But this one annoyed me so much that I actually wrote to the publisher. Not that they ever replied or anything, but I was so angry. And see, it was so stupid because it was clearly a translation error and nobody proved it. And nobody who spoke the original language ever looked at it. It was way too clear. So right now, I just avoid them. Like I said, if I have to read something that's translated, I'll get an English copy.
And I guess for me, often I do like to know who the translator is. I don't necessarily have to recognize them or be familiar with their work, but I like there to be a bit of a biography or at least the name of the translator.
That usually is there though.
Yeah, I mean, where I notice it most, or where you particularly notice it, is if you're reading translations of classics from Project Gutenberg, because in the Victorian era, there were huge numbers of translations into English of French predominantly, but European works. And some of them are quite bizarre when you read them. And I read a Project Gutenberg version of The Man Who Laughs by Victor Hugo, L'Homme, and you could just tell, I mean, because I think because I have read Victor Hugo in the original as well, you get a sense of how his language flows. And you could just tell from how clunky the translation was that it wasn't well done, So I'm always a little bit wary of those Victorian era translations into English where there's no translator name. And I mean, it's hard to avoid it. If you're looking for just free versions of the classics and ebooks, then you're going to get stuck with them. But for modern times, I do like, when I'm getting a classic, I do like to have Penguin or whoever it is, Oxford Classics, let me know who the translator was, so I can feel it's someone viable, if you like. Yeah,
to be fair, there is one translator I know by name, and I think you know her too very well. Her name is Alina Popescu. And her books, all her translated books, end up on my Goodreads page. So I asked Nicki to remove them because she's a librarian, and I can't do that. So that's the only translator name I know. And because some of the books she translates are like nonfiction with varying degrees of crazy reviews, and they show up on my profile, and they're like, I had nothing to do with these. Apparently they're added automatically. I tried to contact the publisher. They don't care, basically. So because they don't care, we're very familiar with her work now. Yes. Not that I know anything about the quality, just the quantity, and there's a lot.
One of my friends works as a translator. She lives in Finland and translates between Swedish, I think, as well as Finnish. And she mainly does TV shows and things. So we can't talk about her book translations, but she's excellent language skills. So I'm sure her translations are perfect. But I think
I remembered. Sorry for interrupting. I know another Alina who's a translator. She's my good friend. Alina.
It's obviously the name translators.
She actually runs a translation agency, but her passion is book translations, and she was trying at the point to translate Bad Blood into Romanian.
Oh yes.
But she never quite has the time because, she manages a bunch of other translations and translators and, huge projects.
Yes.
So, but she's great, and she's the one who I kind of have a chuckle with anytime I see like a really bad translation, and it's like I feel so good when I find something funny and I can send to her, because it's usually the other way. So.
I do appreciate it when you get books where it's a series by the same author, not necessarily a series, but say like Haruki Murakami or someone who's written a lot of books. And if you see that's the same translator into English coming up again and again, you think, well, he's someone who kind of understands that author's style and work, because they've been working on lots of their books. And I think that does come across, because you can usually tell, even if you don't speak the original language, when you're reading a bad translation, you can usually tell, because it feels really clunky and heavy and weird. It doesn't flow nicely.
Yeah, it's like super convoluted, and it's like it sounds like my translations from Latin when I was trying to make sense of it in school. Like seriously, when it was a really complicated text like Cicero, let's say, that sounded like Romanian was my second language. I'm kidding. I'm exaggerating, but it was close enough. So, yeah, that's how I feel about it. Should we delve a bit into the movie? Yeah. So,
I actually, in some ways, I find it harder. Bad movie translation.
I sometimes I think that a lot of people translate movies without seeing them, so that they don't watch the movies while they translate, so that's why things don't make sense. But I remember one time I was in Bucharest at this point, so I was at one of the biggest cinemas there, and I don't remember what movie it was, but I remember the issue, and it was this action flick, and there were some baddies kind of trying to secure a place where they were at, and people like the hero was trying to, take over, whatever. It was a huge battle. And at some point, someone asks for a status report, and the person giving the report says to left of the team storming them, obviously. And the translation is to the left.
Oh.
So 2 people to the left. Because that makes so much sense. And I spent like 10 minutes after that just laughing my ass off. It was a serious situation. It was like close to the climax, and I couldn't stop laughing because of the 2 to the left things. What? You clearly weren't watching the movie. And but my favorite part about translations for movies and TV has to do with communism, because there wasn't any swearing allowed,
right?
Obviously. So every English flick that ever made it here, or every flick in general, was really beautified. Nobody spoke badly of it. And actually, there's a song about it with one of the main voices who did translations in the back reading her translation in Romanian, and he's like singing the English version, which is like full of swear words, and she's like just making it so pretty. And I'm fascinated by that, because it's really hard to preserve the tone and everything, and still make it seem intense when you're like just making it all like PG. But she was like kind of acting out the lines, so that helped. Oh God, because everything was dubbed. Everything, obviously, there was no technology for subtitles, especially for pirated versions, because she was working for the Romanian public TV station, whatever. And she was also doing like bootleg copies of movies that were obviously not allowed, like Chuck Norris.
Yes, yep.
In everything, because, like capitalist win. We can't have that because communists are so much better. Yeah. So, yeah. But it was interesting, because even now they have to tone it down a lot when they translate for the TV stations, at least for the public ones. And it always intrigued me how much they can tone it down. And I think some of it is going to get lost at some point, but it helps to know the language. Let's just say that. It always helps to know the language something's happening in, which is difficult. It's difficult. So we rely so much on translations for everything. If we want to just have a rounded understanding of the world and its cultures, and so many of them are bad, it just saddens me.
The thing I find hard about movies, I mean, I have to say I detest dubbing, and if I won't watch a dubbed film or TV show, and there's no other option, I much prefer to watch it in the original language with subtitles if I need them. But the only trouble with subtitles is if it's a language that I do speak, you notice when it's different. And you're in the middle of the film, and I will sit there and I'm watching something with my husband, and someone will say something and the translation will come up as the subtitle, and I'll be like, he didn't say that. That's not what he said at all. He said whatever. And usually it's roughly the same idea, but it's just not, it's not exactly what it did. I'm like, that's not right. It's wrong.
I have a different problem with subtitles. Let's say I haven't watched a movie in a while that's not English, which I don't watch with subtitles, obviously. And then I switch to a different language, and it takes me like a long time to remember that I need to read those subtitles. And if I stare at the screen, I won't suddenly and magically understand what's happening. Jesus, that's I'm better at it now because I watch a lot of stuff that's Japanese or some of the Nordic series on Netflix a while back, and I'm better at it now. But I remember once having this issue after a long time of not watching anything but English and British and American movies, all in English. And we were watching a Turkish comedy, and every 5 minutes I had to remind myself, read the freaking subtitles, Alina, you don't know this language. It was fascinating. But I prefer that, especially in Japanese. I don't like dubbed anime.
There's something really awful about it, isn't there? I came across some and I was like,
some of them are brilliant. Like Cowboy Bebop has like the best dub ever, and I absolutely love it. And they chose the voices so well. Spice and Wolf has a great dub, but I kind of prefer listening to the original and just reading the subtitles. It's just fine. I'm good with that. I didn't like when I was in hospital. The second time I was ready for everything, so I had Spice and Wolf loaded on my phone. And obviously, when you're watching like a screen this big, you won't be able to read subtitles because, obviously. Also, when you're kind of a bit rugged up, that's not happen. So that's how I discovered it's a really good dub. But generally, I don't know, like the acting of the voice actors doesn't exactly match what's going on screen. Because Japanese has a very specific style. So it's hard to get it right, but some are absolutely brilliant and they're worth watching just because they're so good. But I think like a voice acting, it's so much different from just a subtitle because you have the people who translate first and then the people who act it out, and it has to be this great synergy, which is so rare. I think that's where the disconnect is.
And I think one of the problems you have with that is particularly when you're doing, like we're talking anime, so particularly with a language like Japanese where your verb subject order is different from English. So you're saying the keywords in the sentence at different times. And when you're trying to match that to a facial expression or what's going on with the character, I think that's why they often don't work for me, because it kind of like the character's putting the wrong expression for the word, if you see what I mean, because it's in a different place in the original Japanese sentence.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
It would depend on the language.
And it's also different from how they flow. Like if you read the manga, even translated, it's going to be in a different order. And when you're first when you're first faced with that, it's like a book. You're supposed to know how books work, and this works just the other way around, which is weird. And pro tip: if you've read a lot of manga and you switch to a normal comic, just be aware that you need to shift the way you read. Because I always go right to left, and it makes no sense. Like for the first few pages, I'm like, why doesn't this make sense? Oh, it's the other way around. So
we all know this is really Alina's sneaky way of seeing how the book ends before she reads it.
No, because it's the one page. Like it's the one page, and it makes no sense because you get information that you should get later on, and then you move to the what? No, but yeah, it's interesting. Plus, I think like for translations of graphic novels or manga or comic books in general, it's also a challenge because the space is so little.
Yes.
And let's face it, in Japanese, they can cram a lot of kanji in space. And you have to preserve, the action and the drawing, and then do a translation that kind of works. And there's also the customs that don't match up. So, for example, the sneezing in Japanese, if you sneeze, someone's talking about you or mentioning you, which that makes no sense for a lot of people. Like in Romania, that happens when you hiccup. So it's those sorts of disconnects that if you don't realize it is a disconnect and don't explain it, people will be just like, what? Why? What is this? So yeah, but it's fascinating. I always found it fascinating, especially when it comes to translating short bits like comics, when there's a punchline and the joke has to work on in all languages. And
and I mean, humor and slang is probably one of the hardest areas because different things are considered funny in different languages. I mean, I'm reading Black Butler manga at the moment, and I mean, I noticed a few things. She's actually, it's quite well researched in some ways because it's obviously set in England, even though it's written by a Japanese person. And you can see that there's been a fair bit of research gone into some of the customs and things. Yeah. But one thing that's wrong quite often are titles for the nobles, which they get those wrong all the time, which just kind of make me smile. But that wasn't the point I was going to make. The point I was going to make was the Japanese language jokes that don't 100% translate, like the joke about the one hell of a butler, that in Japanese, because of the way you say that, it could also mean a demon and a butler, but you can't really get that across in the same way as that clever wordplay is in the original Japanese. Like you just can't do it in English in the same way. So you kind of lose some of those little like wordplay things. Like Grail does quite a lot of them as well, here and there. Yeah. You just can't, there's no way you can 100% get them across in English, no matter how well you translate it.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like in order to enjoy manga and anime to its fullest, you need to know a bit about the Japanese culture. It helps a lot with these small things that give flavor to they're like the spice of the story. And without them, you kind of lose something. By the way, that right there, like, can you see the bamboo plant? That's Sebastian.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's his name. Sebastian Bamboo Plant.
Yeah, because I can't summon a demon and turn him into my butler, so I have a little Sebastian that's so pretty. Also, I should say that now. I apologize for the huge mess in the back, but it's October, so a lot of my art supplies are spread across. I didn't bother putting them away before the stream started because I just take them out right after, and whatever. It's me. I'm never going to be like strictly super organized. We know that. So yeah.
And I guess, I mean, linking to, I suppose, humor and slang, you have what do you do when you're translating something with made up words? And this would be books or film and TV. So if you think about, I don't know, like Red Dwarf's got all its own swearing style. Buffy the Vampire Slayer had its own sort of style of slang, which you've then got to find a way to put into another language.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because my friend Alina was completely up in arms over the first Harry Potter translation in Romanian.
Okay.
Because they got the Wonder Child to translate it. She was 19. She had no idea what she was doing. And she translated Hufflepuffs into something that in Romanian sounds like Astropuffy. Astro is what you can think about it. It has to do with the sky. And Puffy is like, I don't know, something fluffy, maybe? So
I suppose she went puff.
It's like, I don't know. I don't know what she was thinking, but the book is riddled with things like that. And of course, seasoned translators were looking at it and were like, this is not the book where you get a teenager to do it. She might be a talented writer. She's 19, she doesn't have the experience, and translating stuff takes a lot more than just being a good writer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it does. And from what I know, they redid the translation later with a seasoned translator. And the thing is that because Alina is passionate about this, she was looking into stories about how the Harry Potter translations were made in different languages. And she was telling me about the French translator and how much thought he put into everything. And when they decided to keep things from the book as they were, and when they translated them, and so much went into it. And in Romanian, we had Astropuffy. Oh God! It was like,
I mean, I think a good translator, you has to understand it's not just about translating everything word for word. You have to kind of understand, as we were saying earlier, things like idioms, cultural references, slang, and also whether you actually need to. Like, I mean, for me, if I was translating Harry Potter, I probably would leave the house names as they are.
Yeah.
Same as you wouldn't change the character names.
I think they kind of translated it in French, at least for Hufflepuffs, but I don't remember exactly what it was into, but I remember it sounded well. I mean, it matched well with the French language and the spirit of the whole book. She says when she hasn't even read the Harry Potter books. By the way, Caitlin, if you watch this later, no, I haven't read it yet, and no, I'm not gonna. Because I'm sorry, I'm too old for it. I can't. I tried. I couldn't even deal with the movies.
See, I have read all the books, and I've read and I've watched the movies, but I'm not a huge fan, and I think it is an age thing. I think, as you say, it's just hit at the wrong age for you and I. I mean, I don't hate them, but I don't.
Yeah, me either. Them. But when the first movie hit, I was at the end of college, I think, something like that. And the thing is, a lot of people who are now adults and love them, I feel they grew up with them. I hear very few who pick them in their 30s and they love the Harry Potter books. No, I'm sorry. It just doesn't appeal to me. That's the only thing. Because it's a middle grade book. I'm sorry. Probably if I ever have kids, I'll read everything with them and hate myself. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that if I had to pick, I really don't like the first two, either the books or the films. But I think that's because they are a little bit more childish. Things did get a bit darker as the series went on, as they got older, as the characters got older.
I know.
So I tend to prefer the later ones, if I'm sort of going to choose them, than those early sort of 2 or 3. But we're completely off topic again. We're talking about translation.
It's fine.
We're digressing. It's fine. It's fine. In fact, talking about translation, though, I was having a fun conversation at work the other day because I was talking to one of my colleagues, and my phone rang. And I answered it, and it's one of these things we've been getting a lot here at the moment, where you answer and then you just get a recorded Chinese message. It's bizarro. It's just, I don't know what it's about, but they just keep.
Are they trying to steal your money? Because
probably something like that. But
usually in here, when we get strange phone calls from strange numbers from different countries, it's like they tap into your account or whatever, and they're train them.
These ones look like they come from Australian mobile numbers, but when you answer, you just get this bizarre recorded message. So anyway, so I got this message and I sort of hung up and said, "Oh, sorry, I don't speak Chinese." And my colleague was like, "Oh, how comes? You speak all these other languages?" So I said, "Oh, I'm doing Japanese at the moment." So she's like, "Oh, you're teaching yourself?" So I said, "Oh, yes." I said, "But I've got a really skewed vocabulary at the moment because I'm watching a huge amount of anime and listening to like Japanese musicals. So I can't tell you the word for a fair number of everyday items, but I do know words for demon, contract, soul, murderer."
Yeah.
So it's a very skewed vocabulary, all based mostly around Death Note and Black Butler.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with this because my boyfriend is teaching himself Japanese, and he's using this apparently strange method of learning, but very effective one. So he first learned like about 1,000 kanji, the ones that make up like 90% of the vocabulary. And he uses an app called Anki, which is like this complicated app to help you learn in a way that's conducive to long-term memory and stuff like that, and picking stuff quickly. And we were laughing one day because we were watching an anime and there was a sign with kanji, and he said, "You know what's strange? I understand what each of these kanji means, but together they make no sense." And we were trying, we knew what the sign said, so we were trying to piece different meanings of each kanji to see if it makes sense in any way, or it's just like, like when you merge two words, they kind of change each other and they mean completely different things. But we kind of got there, but not really. But I think I'm going to try the same method as well, because it's a very intuitive one. It tries to mimic the way children learn.
Yes.
Which I think it's really good, and it's how I picked up most of my vocabulary, because I picked it up from Cartoon Network, and for the longest time it wasn't even subtitled, let alone dubbed. So I was just watching cartoons in English with no subtitles, and I was studying English in school at that point. But it was quite limited at that point in terms of vocabulary and grammar and whatever, because I was just starting. So later on, when they added subtitles, it became a lot easier, obviously, but it helped a lot. And I remember it was the same thing with Spanish. The bits of Spanish I picked up, I picked them from TV, because after the communism thing went away, first it was Dallas that hit us, and then telenovelas, obviously. And everyone was watching them. Like, we had an episode a week.
Yes.
For each, and everybody knew what was happening in that telenovela, obviously. So I watched a lot of them, and I just picked up words from that, hearing a lot and maybe reading the translations.
Yeah.
The subtitles, sorry. So yeah, that's a method that I think works, and I'm going to try it too. But I think it bears to say, like, it's important to learn a language you have some passion for, and that you consume on a regular basis. This is not the case for you, because you're kind of focusing your language practice to keep them all like current.
There's too many. Fit them all in.
I know, but for most people, they will learn one or two foreign languages in their lifetime. So it's important to pick one that you use frequently. It's why my boyfriend is now learning Japanese as his third language, because he consumes a lot of Japanese media.
Yes.
So that helps a lot. Like, if you have contact with that language every day in some shape or form, it will make everything a lot easier. And I think that's what a lot of translators lack sometimes. Their only contact with that language is their work.
Yeah.
And it shows in their translations, because in some cases, at least for book translators, I feel that's the case. Or maybe it's just because the industry, at least here, goes for the entry-level translators or agencies that hire a lot of entry-level people because they're cheap.
Yes.
So they're not well versed and they don't know a lot about the culture and the literature of the country they're translating from. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what's going on and why it's getting so bad, but I think it's just a cheapo business model that leads there. Because I think they weren't prepared to deal with this high volume, because now the way it happens here, at least, is that movies get made and then we start translating the books.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of movies from a lot of series and TV series that are currently being made, and a lot of translations happening fast. So
yes,
they have to cut corners and cut costs. That's what I think happens. But yeah, it kind of sucks a bit. I don't know. It's annoying. It's why I don't buy books in Romanian anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's probably a worse situation there than we get. I think we get the odd clunky one, but these days I think most of the stuff we get is fairly well done, particularly when it is for a big name for an author who's producing a lot of work, who everyone knows. So someone like Hador Laxness or Haruki Murakami, they put the money into that and the time into those.
To be fair, the Japanese translations in Romanian, they're great. I think they're older. But yeah, I've read Haruki Murakami and Kobo Abe, and I had no complaints. It made a lot of sense. But I'm not sure these are very new.
Right.
The ones I read that were really bad were for newly released books.
Right.
Because even for Turkish books, Orhan Pamuk books are fine. At least the older ones I have, and I had a few. Those were well translated. The newer ones, like I can't remember the title in English. No, I can't. It's fine. I'll look for it and link it in a comment. This was a newer release, and it obviously wasn't a Nobel Prize winner. But it was, I know there was a lot of controversy around the author. It was a female author, and the problem was that she kind of admitted there was a genocide happening in Turkey, and the government didn't like that very much because they're still denying that they ever did something like that. So it was a high-profile book, and they still messed up the translation. And another caveat, while I'm aware of the level of movie translations now, and a lot of them are erroneous, I haven't bought books in Romanian in like 5 years or more. So take that with a grain of salt. Maybe in the past 5 years they got better. I don't think so.
She doesn't look hopeful.
I mean, no, like if it's a really popular book, maybe. If it's from I think French translations are easier because they have a longer tradition. Because during the communist era, French was still taught in school.
Okay.
While English was really rare. We got German, French, and mostly Russian, then some German, and then some French.
Right.
Because,
Yes.
who needs English when you're talking to other commies? I'm being mean, but yeah, that was the purpose behind it. At least the school system was more utilitarian, let's say.
Yes.
At that point. So yeah, that's okay. Let's go back to the topic. Do you intend to translate your books into any language?
Not personally, certainly. I mean, as a translator, you should be working into your native language from a language you speak fluently. So, I shouldn't officially be translating into French or German, whatever. So,
I should be translating into Romanian. I'm never gonna do it. No, it's not. I feel like that's writing another book, and I don't want to write a book in Romanian.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. But which language would you most like your books to be in?
I'd say probably either French or German, because I have a few pen pals in those countries who don't speak English, and who have said, "Oh, we'd like to read your stuff, but we can't in English." I actually write to a lady in Latvia. I don't speak Latvian. She doesn't speak English, but she teaches German at schools. So we write in German. So we're sort of a second language for both of us, is our language of our letters. And she often says, "Oh, if your books ever come out in German, let me know." So probably French or German, because they're the ones I get asked for the most.
Yeah, true. I don't know. Japanese. I would like to have like the werewolf book translated into
because you've got your Japanese characters and
that would be interesting. But other than that, I don't know. Maybe German, because I have a lot of readers from there that already buy my English books. So it would be nice for them. Maybe Italian. I don't know. But I'm definitely not translating them. But because we got to the topic of books, maybe we should talk about how translations happen for authors. And there are two ways to go about it. If you're with a publisher, either the publisher does it, or your agent can negotiate with foreign publishers that then acquire the rights for the translation, and so on and so forth. Or if you're self-published, there are another two options. You either hire a translator. They usually offer proofreading as well. And if you talk to enough people, you'll find good translators. Or you have local publishers reach out to you because your book sells well. And that happens quite a bit for some German and Italian translations. At least I've seen them. There are specialized publishers, at least for the LGBT world, that will reach out to more successful authors and do the translations. And I think that those are all the possibilities covered.
I think I haven't seen anything else.
I've seen varying opinions. Apparently German and Italian translations kind of take the book into the black quite fast. Others not so much, like Spanish. French is depends on who does it and what the author is experienced. And I've seen quite a few horror stories about translators disappearing after you paid in advance, which is fascinating. But that's a risk you take as a self-published author with mainly any service you contract. And I think people who know the language, at least basically, well, conversationally, if they know the language their book is translated into, I think when they look at the sample, they can tell.
You can tell if it's good or bad, or not.
I mean, I imagine I could do that for French or something like that. I wouldn't be able to do it for German. I'd be like, oh, capital letters in the middle of the sentence. This has to be right. Because I know that's how it goes. Also really long words. This is German. I'm exaggerating. I think I know like 10 words in German or 15. It's fine. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, it's because this is a genre talk. It bears to say that if you came up with a cover that works well for your genre in your language of choice, that will change drastically with the translation. If you get a publisher to do the translation for you, which I think it's a lot easier for a lot of people, they will change the cover and they will create a new cover that suits the market. And if you're self-published, I think you should pay attention to that and do the research all over again, just like you'd be doing it in English, let's say, if that's the main language you publish in. I was really surprised, especially by German covers. I feel like they have a world of their own.
They have a whole thing of their own going on. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's very different from anything I've seen in the US. I mean, I know large publishers do different covers between the UK and the US. I haven't seen it done by self-published authors, and those covers seem to work really well. I think when it comes to Amazon buyers, for example, or online buyers in general, I think they picked up how to recognize genre and interest from the cover, and that works internationally. But when you're in a traditionally published environment and where they push print books more, then you have to abide by a certain aesthetic that will make you stand out in a group of books that kind of look in the same style, I guess. And other than that, I don't know. It comes with different types of marketing, and it helps. Like if you're self-published, I think it helps to have a translator or a translation agency that also does the promo. I know that that's popular because you have no idea about the, X language sites that could promote your book because you don't speak it, let's say. And another thing is, like, I think you have to rely on readers a lot if you don't know the language, because they'll tell you if something is really off.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. I think I kind of covered all the points I'd written down. So.
Oh, God.
I can tell a funny mistranslation story, if you like, to finish this off. I went to the Czech Republic, to Prague, with my mother and sister. My sister was a little bit fussy about her food at the time. And I'd been learning a bit of Czech, and I certainly wasn't fluent, but I could order some things and generally make myself understood in shops and things like that. So we're in a restaurant. My sister's being very fussy, doesn't like anything on the menu. All she wants is a salad, but she doesn't want any sauce in it, just plain salad, no dressing, nothing. So I don't know the word for only, but I do know the word for without. So I sit there and list without this, without this, without this. When it comes to the table, she has a bowl of chopped up cucumber and nothing else. So there you go. Translation horror story. Also, while in the Czech Republic, on another trip with a friend of mine, we had tickets for the theatre. We were going to see a Czech production of Jekyll and Hyde musical. And we got to the theatre, we were early, but I wanted to know how much time we had before the door would open and things to go in. So I don't know the word for open, but I do know the words for everything else I want to say in the sentence. So I'm standing there in front of this little old lady who didn't speak any English at the ticket booth, going, "At what time do the doors?"
Yeah, your hands are your best tools.
It absolutely worked. I got the answer. But
I mean,
there we go. Some amusing translation stories of my Czech language dramas.
Your hands make up for all the words you don't know. That or drawing. That also helps. It's like a weird game of charades sometimes.
But the rest of my sentence was perfect. And when I met up with one of my pen pals over there, she kept laughing, and I kept saying to her, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Am I saying stuff wrong?" She went, "No, you're not saying it wrong." She went, "You're just pronouncing every word so carefully. You sound like a newsreader or something."
I mean, yeah, because you pay more attention to how you pronounce words. And when you don't, like on my latest video on the art channel, I noticed when I was editing, but I didn't bother to re-record. I couldn't decide between newbie and noob, and I merged those into noob, and it's fine. It's like, what the hell, Alina? It's noob. It's fine. Uh, you know this word. You've been using it to refer to yourself for a lot of things. Noob gamer, noob artist, noob a lot of things. So what's wrong? So yeah, it was interesting. But I think that's the point where you feel you're comfortable with the language, when these things happen, like they would happen in your mother language. Because like in my native Romanian, I jumble words together all the time. Let's face it, that's how hangry happened. People merge hungry and angry, so like certainly noob won't be a thing. But yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, I think when I started YouTube, I was really aware of trying to be as clear as I could, because I know I have an accent that's always going to happen, but I needed people to understand what I was saying, and then I started to get less and less. Because it was like, oh, you clearly get me, so you know. At least you have a nice example of what a Romanian accent sounds like, because it's different from Russian, by the way. And I think, look, that's an important part of translation. How you portray accents of people who are foreign. Yes. I think, because I know there are entire books on this. On common mistakes people make in certain languages, just to help translators or writers. Because if you write a Russian character, you need to understand what speech patterns would happen, because they kind of use their own language structure to speak in English, and that's how you realize, as you know, that Romanian and Russian accents are really different, and the common mistakes are also really different. Even if they might sound the same, what they're saying is very different. And guess what? In that book that has that for all the languages, there's no chapter on Romania.
Well, I have been having a bit of a laugh last few days, because I've been listening to all the Black Butler musicals, all 5 of the Black Butler musicals, and there's a song in the first one. Every now and again they throw in an English line randomly. Anyway, not just "Yes, my lord." Yeah, not just "Yes, my lord," but just a random English line, just wherever. And there's one song in the very first musical they did, and he sings an entire verse, the first verse of the song, in English. And the first time I heard it, I thought, what the hell is this? I didn't recognize it as English, because all the words that should have been the stressed words on the beat were on the offbeat. And so the line was, "You want it all." So it should be, "You want it all." But the stress was on "you want it all." And, and it took me like 2 listens. So I was like, oh, he's in English. But because the stress wasn't in the right place, it just took me a while to just comprehend what he was saying.
Yeah, I think lyrics and poetry in translation are their own special breed of monster. I think they're like the dragon of translations. I don't think you can get away with it without being a bit of a poet yourself.
No, you kind of have, I think with those you have to have a bit of artistic license to kind of rephrase things to make it work.
Because I remember, like, Mihai Eminescu is like the most well-known ever to live poet in Romania, and I've read several translations of his poems in English, and they're similar yet different. And no matter how hard people try, I feel like a lot of it is still lost in translation.
Yes.
So for certain things, it definitely is a bonus if you can read it in its original language.
Yeah,
I guess. But for something like Mihai Eminescu, that would be like super difficult, because even if you're fluent in current modern Romanian, that's an older style of language.
Yes.
So yeah, you still have to rely on translations. It's tricky. It's tricky. It's like how Shakespeare is for people who are fluent in English. Let's say that's a different kind of animal. And I remember when I first read my first Shakespeare was in high school. I was in a foreign language advanced class. We had like 9 classes per week, so 9 hours, no, 6, 7 hours of English per week. I don't remember, a lot anyway.
Yeah.
And when I first read Midsummer Night's Dream, I got about 70% of it, which was kind of low for how much I could get from a book at that point.
Yes.
And I think Midsummer Night's Dream is kind of easy. It's like entry-level Shakespeare. At least that's how I feel. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, but I think it's a lovely thing to discuss and delve into, at least for the giggles, if nothing else. So yeah, maybe we should. I hope we hear about this in the comments later, about how people feel about translations, because I know we're like on AuthorCube, we're kind of like from around the world, so we can get very different opinions, and
yes.
I hope that happens.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear if what you've got to say about translations if you don't speak any foreign languages, because obviously Alina and I are coming at it from not an advanced point of view, but a point of view where we both do speak multiple languages, which does affect our view on translation.
Yes.
So definitely. Yeah, if you're just only have your native language, how do you feel about translations, and can you sort of tell if things are well translated or not, even if you don't speak the language it's coming from?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that, because I'm fairly sure as a kid I wasn't aware of it, but I'm not sure if it was because the translations were really good and the books flowed well, or the fact that the books that I read were kind of old, so people had time to refine the translations. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are tomes written on Dumas and his work, so it's easier to translate that. But yeah, I'm really curious to know, because as an adult, I never had that experience. I mean, my only experience was with manga when I first started reading, and I could really tell when translation was bad, because it just sounded wrong, but that's because it's a very different language. So I'm not sure if a language that has similar structure to mine, I'd be able to tell.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay,
Yay!
so we'll wrap up our discussion there. So what have you got on at the moment, Alina? Tell us your plans in the next month till our next talk. So much, she says she can't even cope.
Well, yeah. So I'm supposed to have 2 books coming out this month. Murderous Affair and Murderous Homecoming will both be released this month. I'm done with the proof and everything for Murderous Affair. I just need to format it and stuff. And for Murderous Homecoming, I'm going through the edits that I got, and then I need to proof it and release it. Good thing I have the blurs now. I've worked on those for like a week. Like, I changed them so much. It was like, at that point, I was like, well, I'm going insane. I'm also doing Inktober. I was initially going to turn all my characters into manga characters, and then I realized I don't have the skills for that, because I can follow tutorials quite well. I can redraw characters that already exist, but designing my own characters in specific poses, nope. So now I'm just playing with ink and dip pens, which is fascinating and very difficult, but not that difficult that I want to rage quit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of writing, I'm trying to wrap up the 3rd Owl Investigations book, so that that I can dive back into Just Don't and finish the last arc of that series. So I'm gonna be dead by the end of the month, basically. So don't make plans for the next read along. Probably not happening because I'll be exhausted into an early grave, I think. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's not that bad. It's not that bad, right? I swear. No, he doesn't care. He's asleep. So, yeah. What have you got on your plate for the month? I can't speak anymore. Like my battery is run out.
Not a huge amount. I mean, I've been really busy lately because I started this Japanese 2 months ago, and I am really trying to immerse myself in it. So I've been doing it every day for the last 8 weeks, at least sort of half hour or so, plus then watching anime and stuff in the evenings. And so that's taken a bit of a chunk of my time. My little like Black Butler Death Note obsessions, taking a chunk of my time. And so what with one thing and another, I haven't got a huge amount done writing wise. I mean, I have been doing a bit of research for covers and things for re-releasing Ragnarok. So I've been doing a little bit of work looking into that, setting up some seller accounts and that. So the plan is still early next year to bring those out. So I do need to get a bit of a move on to start thinking about covers.
I'm going to format those.
That's it. So we need to get moving on those. That'll be my job. And I've obviously got a Christmas story coming out with Dream Spinner for the Advent calendar. I have been really surprised the last couple of months. I had some very good sales for Blood is Forever, which was my June release. I think it's my best-selling book ever so far.
I mean, so I get why.
So that's been good. I've been happy about that. So yeah, not a huge amount happening. Just trying to find the time to get cracking and get things ready for the Ragnarok release. Pretty much, it'll be me for the next month.
Maybe you should turn Blood is Forever into a series and have them investigate magical mysteries.
Yeah, a couple of people have said to me that you're going to do a sequel. And I said, well, potentially I could, as you say, that you could have them have another mystery or event to investigate. But I'd have to come up with an idea I was really passionate about to do it.
Yeah, true.
So
I mean, don't do like I did, and I had the all-time bestseller, and I never released the second book. It's been written for more than half a year, but I never released it. That's not the way to do it.
Potentially, but I need a good idea to come to me first.
That sounds cool. Because I really enjoy that book. So, I mean, you already know that. Fine. I'll keep the fangirling to a minimum, but I will reserve the right to pester you in private. Because sometimes things work. Like, look at Ragnarok. That worked eventually. And I didn't even have to pester you much lately, so.
No.
I think I'm getting more efficient.
It's sort of happening, but it's going slow. But it will happen. I will get there eventually. We are pretty much down to sort of formatting, cover design stuff. So it's all edited, everything's done, and on that side of stuff. So it will happen. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So I guess we should tell them about our next stream. So obviously we will be back on Alina's channel in early November, as long as she hasn't died from her October work excesses. And we'll be doing one of our read-alongs. And our book is for the classics genre, and we're going to do Men and Lisco by Prevost.
I completely forgot.
So that's our book. So if you want to have a read and join us, please do.
There goes my plan of having it read well ahead of the stream. Sure. Yeah, we're doing that, and it will be on my channel at some point in November. We'll have to figure out when that happens. We might change times a bit because for those of you who don't know, Australia has already switched to what is it? It's summertime now, right?
Yeah, we've just gone forward for spring. In fact, it happened this morning at like 2 a.m. So typically whenever this happens, I've had a really weirdo day because I just seem to have run out of time like before I've done anything because we're up late. And all the clocks went forward and suddenly it's gone.
Yeah. and the thing is, at the end of the month, we'll switch back because it's winter here. So the time difference between us will be a lot bigger. So we'll see when that happens, but we'll announce it. You'll see the stream going up on the stream announcement, like the video, whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. It's fine. It will pop up in your subscriptions, I guess. And I'll try to announce it on Facebook if I don't die in the meantime. So yeah, come join us with Manonesco. I hear it's awesome. I've been meaning to read it for like 5 years, 10, 15. I don't know. Since I read,
so this was the good excuse Alina needed to finally read it.
To finally read it, and I'm still wondering why we didn't go with Sad for this one. Just because, like, I've been reading reviews of his books on Amazon, and I'm like, oh God, people. What are you saying here?
I really enjoy the Marquis de Sade. I find his works quite good fun.
Same.
But yeah, I'm just thinking, how could we do a I'm not sure we could do like a non-R-rated video about them though. So I'm just like, how would we discuss them without like making this like not safe for work content? But
yeah. But tell us in the comments if you want us to at some point do Marquis de Sade read along. I mean, it will be into our BDSM subgenre of romance. Before BDSM was a thing, because sadism, like, if you didn't know about that connection, why are you reading his books, people, and leaving weird reviews on Amazon? So yeah, that's the plan. That made no sense. It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't make sense to me either. You're fine. It's only 9 a.m. I've been up since 7. I should be awake by now.
But people.
I mean, look, this is my second cup and it's almost done. So pretty much I had enough coffee. Just that my brain doesn't work this morning. I think it's like the sympathy pains. It's sympathy. Being disoriented because you switched to springtime. So yeah, that's what it is. I'm blaming you, basically. Well, not you, like your country's idea.
So not just me, my entire country is now to blame.
To be fair, I'm blaming everyone in the world who switches. I think it's the worst idea ever. It's proven to be bad for people. It bolsters depression and suicidal thoughts and everything. So I blame everyone for it. So it's fine. Anything not to take responsibility.
And what you'll love, Alina, is here in Australia, not all the states do it. So some of us change and some of us don't, which is very confusing when you're trying to work out what time it is for someone in Queensland and things.
Yeah. Same in the US. I hear some states don't ever switch. I hope. I mean,
strange, like people.
They were talking about cutting it off in the EU because of all the issues it causes, but I'm still waiting for that miracle to happen. Like every year, I'm hoping this is going to be the last when we switch. But we'll see. I guess. Damn it.
Well, on that note, I guess we will wrap up. Obviously, we'll see you next month on Alina's channel for the Manonesco read along, and then we'll be back on my channel for a final one in December to wrap up this year's series. Though don't worry, we've got more planned heading into 2020 as well. So we'll announce some of those plans when we get to the December kind of wrap up one. So we will leave you all for now, and we will see you all again next month. Bye. Everyone.